So right from the jump, when we talk about couples in pregnancy, both people are having very different experiences. Generally, the non-birthing partner is having a very separate external experience. They're not feeling the energetic baby. They're not feeling the symptoms. Their body is not changing, although some partners will tell you that they put on weight right along with their pregnant partner. But in general, their bodies aren't changing in the same way, and they're not having that same experience. So already there's this place that can create a divide.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Kumbay'all podcast. Stephanie, we are so excited to have you here with us today. We would love to just jump right in. Yeah. We're talking about how to stay connected to your partner during pregnancy and postpartum. And I want to start with, why is that important? As a pelvic PT, I feel that we need to be telling women to connect to themselves and to allow themselves time to heal and to bond with their baby. Now, there's so much to learn in this stage of life, in this huge transformation, right? And so I'd love to hear from you a little bit about, why do we also want to save some energy for the partner in keeping that relationship strong? And I'd love to hear what you think about, is that important throughout? Are we talking like those first 2 weeks postpartum, we get a little break, like, let's be realistic. Or does that really kick back up after the fourth trimester? Or what would you say to that?
Yeah. So, I love that you said it's kind of a both and, right? Absolutely. We want women tending to themselves, getting to know themselves, healing their bodies, learning who they are, both before and after the transition into parenthood, right? But if you are partnered through pregnancy and you want to stay partnered after having your children, paying attention to that connection is also really important. I think that, often what happens is the birthing parent starts their transformation a little bit during the period of pregnancy, right? Like, they have this whole experience of whatever their symptoms may be, how their body is changing, getting to feel baby moving inside and energetically starting to get to build relationship with that baby and knowing that baby. So right from the jump, when we talk about couples in pregnancy, both people are having very different experiences. Generally, the non-birthing partner is having a very separate external experience. They're not feeling the energetic baby. They're not feeling the symptoms. Their body is not changing, although some partners will tell you that they put on weight right along with their pregnant partner. But in general, their bodies aren't changing in the same way, and they're not having that same experience. So already there's this place that can create a divide. And also, so often in pregnancy, the pregnant partner is not interested in physical intimacy. And so we start, even in pregnancy, to see some disconnection. When we have disconnection between partners in pregnancy, how everyone shows up in the delivery room through the labor process, whether that's at home or in the hospital, may also be disconnected or create a further disconnection. And then, of course, that leads into this massive transformation and transition that happens postpartum. And it is postpartum for both partners. Absolutely. We cannot forget partners. Everyone's name is changing. This is what I like to tell my clients, right? You cannot underestimate the massive transition that this is. It's not just like suddenly you're sleep deprived and your bodies feel different and you're figuring out how to keep a baby human alive. But what I always say to my partners is, you cannot underestimate this transition. Your name changes, for goodness sake. You're no longer just Amanda, your mom. You're no longer just Rebecca, your mom. Your whole being changes. And I think what our culture neglects is the fact that that is true for the birth partner also. Their name changes as well. Their role in the world changes as well. how they see themselves changes as well. And so I think that if we are not intentionally connecting in pregnancy, now that may look very different than it did pre-pregnancy, right? There can be different rituals, different ways of connecting, different types of intimacy. And this is also going to be true in the postpartum period. But if we neglect fortifying and deepening that connection, if we neglect opening up into vulnerability about fears and expectations and really getting open with our communication there, it's going to fall apart during the birth and most certainly afterward.
Mm. So I heard you say that some of this comes from the fact that they're on two different, not trajectories, but they're having two different experiences. So the birthing partner starts the process sooner because they're feeling the life, they're feeling their body change. Are there other things that contribute to that besides the fact that one is giving birth and starting their motherhood journey earlier, or their journey to become a parent earlier than the birth partner, right? Or is there other things that are going into play that kind of affect that relationship and maybe pull them apart?
Well, I think a lot of things could potentially, right? I feel like there are infinite variables in this realm because every human is so different, right? But if we want to throw out a couple of things to be mindful of, then I would say, like, are folks on the same page about how and where they want to birth their baby, what type of care they want to receive prenatally? Are they on the same page about parenting style and even things like medical decisions? Do we want to vaccinate? Do we not want to vaccinate? How do we want to do these things, right? So there's so many surface level and depth elements, right, that come into play in any relationship. I mean, let's be real. There's two people. Everybody's coming from a different background. They have different perspectives, probably on all things. I mean, I think the Gottmans say like 67% of arguments between couples are absolutely unresolvable because they come from a place of just completely different perspectives, different values, different standards, different opinions that may not ever be able to be shifted. And so you have to like find your way to acceptance, or maybe not being together if that's the case, right? So there's so many little pieces that come into play that could impact connection, just as it could, even if you're not going through a major life change like having a baby. I mean, if you've ever had the experience, for example, of one partner losing a job or getting a new job, experiencing the grief of loss of a loved one, all of these things can really throw connection, through a tumbler, if you will. And so whatever the transition is, here we're talking about bringing children into the world, but whatever the transition is, there has to be mindfulness and attention and intention around cultivating and maintaining connection.
I mean, that segues perfectly into this. So how can people start to do that? And when, before baby comes, before they even get pregnant, and what if what are some ways that they could start holding on and nurturing that connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it can be as simple as carving out a certain amount of minutes per week on a certain day every week, right? We're all living our lives. Most people these days are, both people in a couple are working in some capacity. They have their own internal worlds going on. So I think to some extent, it starts with being mindful and tending to the internal world, which you kind of started with at the beginning of this chat, Amanda, and like having awareness of where we are. Where am I? What am I feeling? What is that coming from? And both partners actually doing that. And then having set time to come together. Number one, to share, right? If you have a hard time having daily connection with openness and vulnerability and like really clear communication, then kind of setting time on a regular basis that's non-negotiable for doing that, for sharing. This is what's happening in my week. This is what's happening in my internal world. Or even, this happened earlier in the week between us, and I kind of felt this way about it. It's almost like a weekly clearing, if you will. And then in addition to that, things that are really practice oriented. So spending time not talking, but breathing together. If, there are very specific exercises and practices that fit into this realm. One that I sometimes do with my couples when we're doing coaching in particular, if they're just struggling to see each other, which happens so often, right? We don't feel seen, we don't feel heard, we don't feel met. And so like then we start acting out from this space of lacking and yearning. So one is just to sit face to face, either in chairs or on the floor, and have your knees touching. And, my hand is on my partner's heart and my partner's hand is on my heart. And do some eye gazing. Sometimes it makes it easier to put on a song so that you have this, you're like, okay, we're going to be in this vulnerable space and it's going to be in a container that's 4 minutes long, because that can be really tough to do, especially if you haven't done it a lot. So it's really just eye gazing, really taking time to physically see and energetically feel your partner and get a reminder of, why this is your person in the first place. Mm-hmm. So this is just one example of how you can do partner connection. One of the things I recommend for my pregnant partners who are preparing to have a baby, our sense of smell is one of the strongest memory senses that we have. So one of the things that I really encourage them to do is kind of a fun date night that serves multiple purposes as they go through their process, is to like go to, their nearest natural food store where they have essential oils. And sometimes this can be a little bit tough on a pregnant partner because the sense of smell is more heightened, but to kind of separately go through, smell different essential oils and come back together and share like, okay, these were the 3 I really loved. And then compare and see between the 2 of them, which, if they each took 5 or if they each took 3, which 3 or 4 they both really like. Get a little like spray bottle that they also often have at near health food stores, and then buy those oils that everybody liked, bring them home, mix them with water in this spray bottle till you get a blend that is like really just feels good. I mean, I don't know if it feels like love, if it feels like energizing, whatever the feeling is that you're wanting to go for, that creates like a unification. Then you can start using this through pregnancy or through your conception period or wherever you're starting. And before you sit to do your connection practice, you spray this in the space. And so you're creating this scent memory with the feeling of co-regulation in the nervous system, the feeling of connection. And then this scent becomes part of your internal nervous system sense of safety, calm, and connectedness. So then you can use this, in labor. You can use it in the birthing space. You can use it afterwards, when things are, the 4th trimester is hard, in particular, the first 6 weeks, it's like, I always call it's like triage mode, right? So, in particular, I like to encourage non-birthing partners in that time to really be the keeper of time and space, to really hold that part of masculine energy, because the birthing partner should be nowhere near masculine energy in that time if they can help it, like from their own, and like they should be around it, but they shouldn't have to be calling upon theirs in that time. It's a very feminine state to be in flow of sometimes sleeping, sometimes not, learning your new body, learning your new heart, learning your new mind, feeding from your body if you're nursing. And so, I do coach my clients that in particular for that first 6 weeks, that is how the partner shows up, is they are the keeper of time and space. They are the nourisher and nurturer. And so they are the ones that are in charge of, hey, we need some connection time, baby's sleeping. Does this mean sexual intimacy? No, probably not. But there are other ways to feel intimate and connected, even in physical ways, that are really beneficial to kind of keeping the fires lit, to keeping hearts open and keeping folks connected.
That's great. When couples work with you, do people normally come when they're trying to strengthen things, or do you find that you work more with people who have already felt kind of like conflict or disconnection? Talk to us a little bit about that, like what kind of clients you see.
It's such a variety, honestly. Like, I have clients who come and they already are doing practices and they're already connected and they really need coaching more around like nervous system regulation and fears that they have about birth and parenting, and or fears that they have around like setting boundaries with family and friends in that fourth trimester period. Or, sometimes I get people who haven't explored themselves at all and they really don't know, but they want to make sure that they're walking into this transition as prepared as possible. And often they don't know what that even means or what that entails, right? So some folks I get strictly as coaching clients, and we're doing some deep digging, we're doing connection coaching, or I'm going in for postpartum coaching and we're unpacking the birth story and what's happening in their relationship in this delicate time that just really needs more tenderness and more care. Some folks come before they've even had a baby because they want to be really conscious and intentional about how they're even calling that in. So I really have a wide variety of folks, which I love. My work, really what I'm called to do is to individualize everything. So while if you look on my website, there's kind of a curriculum there of sorts, not everybody needs everything, and not everybody even needs that thing. Sometimes something comes up that is really unexpected. So my practice is to just really listen when I'm with my clients and to direct the work to where they are, not to where I think somebody should be or to my outline of quote unquote curriculum, but really to kind of say like, okay, here's where you are, get a picture of where they would like to be. If they know, sometimes they don't. And that's also some great discovery to be done. So it really is the full spectrum of like 0 to like, we're just trying to like refine things and know how to have a spiritually connected, energetically connected birth and fourth trimester and parenting experience.
I love it. And when you were talking, what came to mind was premarital counseling. How some people will do that before they even get married. Yet I don't hear enough about this. I haven't heard about this at all until I met you. Is this training and this counseling before? Like, I just love what you just said. Energetically and spiritually aligned family, cohesive unit, and then you head into welcoming life into this world, and then starting off your parenting and family journey from that connected state. And with those tools, you continue through ups and downs. I absolutely love that, and I think we should be doing more of this. So what about the couples who find you or who haven't found you yet and they're listening to this podcast and they're already feeling disconnected and they feel like there's some room for growth or opportunity there for improving things? What would you say to them, or what advice do you have for them?
Start looking inward first. That is number one. What is happening? What are you feeling? What is the disconnect? I kind of call it like an ick. When that ick comes up in your body, when you have that feeling of like, this is not right. How can you get really descriptive about what is not right? What are you feeling? What aren't you feeling that you would like to be feeling? And where does this come from? Right? So often, I would venture to say even most of the time, when there is disconnection, it comes from some sense of conflict or some experience of conflict or not being met in the way we want to be met. Now, when it comes from not being met in the way we want to be met, we need to look at the first question is, have I been really clear in my requests for how I want to be met? Most of the time, I think this answer is no. I think a lot of us like have this romantic perspective on relationships that says, when I'm with my person, they're just going to know. And that is such faulty thinking. Unfortunately, I certainly in my 20s had this thinking, and I was forever mad at my ex-husband. Like, why doesn't he know that this is how it should be? Well, honey, Stephanie, like getting real with myself, I was never actually asking for the thing that I wanted or needed. I just expected that he would magically know. And that's really unfair. And when I don't make a request and he doesn't agree to meet that, but I still have the expectation, I mean, that like there's no way for it to be fulfilled. And unfulfilled expectation is like kind of the root of all evil in relationships, I think. And so, number one is look at yourself, understand why. Why are you feeling what you're feeling? The other piece, besides not having like really communicated, and that's what comes up when we have that feeling of not being met most of the time, I think, is that we just haven't communicated, or we have, and they're not honoring that. And then that's something really big to talk about, because we have to speak to, well, what is your barrier to meeting this request to the partner? Like, we have to understand what the barriers are too, right? And a lot of barriers, a lot of things that come up in conflict are actually not really even about what's happening in that dynamic. They're really about something coming up in that dynamic that triggers the nervous system to say, red alert, because of something that's happened long, long ago. Could have been when we were 3. It could have been we were 7. It could have been we were 15. It doesn't matter. If I'm 43 next month, and so I know I've got 42 younger selves inside of me that all have different experiences of the world. And I bring all of that to where I am now. So, the advice is to look inward first. What's the why, what's happening? And I encourage that even in conflict. Like, when you start to feel activated in conflict, if you need to, ask your partner for a pause. I need to pause this. I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling upset, and I'm not able to really hear you right now. So I need to pause and go like check in with myself, and then we will reconvene. I will come to you to start this conversation again within the next 24 hours. Because if we don't check ourselves, if we're not self-aware of what's happening in the moment, and we are in a state of nervous system dysregulation, whether that's like fight or flight or freeze or fawn, everything that comes at us is going to be perceived through the lens of whatever state we're in. So it's never fruitful to engage in conflict when we are in a state that is dysregulated. So that is really tricky. And it takes a lot of practice to be able to be like, oh, hold up, I need a break. And to really take the time to not just take the break to like exit the stressful situation or the activating situation or that feeling of dysregulation, but to take the time to self-regulate and to understand why that activation was happening in the first place. What is it reminding me of from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? And then coming back and being able to say, you know what, this is what's coming up for me right now. And this is what I need you to hear, and going from there.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like the whole postpartum, like the beginning postpartum period, is a constant state of dysregulation. And so like acknowledging you have to be extra careful that everything is, like you said it perfectly, everything is filtered. All of your thoughts, feelings, is filtered through that state of dysregulation. And so I think, and then what happens is you build upon it and you get further disconnected because everyone thinks the other person is coming at from a calm, same place. No. Yes. We're pretty much all dysregulated.
We're not our best selves.
Yeah.
No. And I love what you said about checking in with yourself and connecting with that first, and then pause. And before you engage in the argument or engage in something, really being able to turn inward and say, oh gosh, I'm having an emotional reaction right now, or I'm, in a dysregulated state, and then stopping, which I feel like so much of our society is outward focused, either blaming other people or looking to other people for the answers. And that ability to turn inward and acknowledge and identify what you're experiencing as, okay, this is not the best time to even talk about this. And then to take that time to go in and explore, whether you're journaling or thinking or whatever. I love all that you said there. And it mirrors what I teach in my practice, because I'm always teaching women, patients, especially that are heading into birth. You need to, cultivate that slowing down time, cultivate that time, because it's going to be you and baby when the first time comes, and having you be able to check in with your body. What are you experiencing, feeling emotionally and feeling physically, and then connecting with your pelvic floor is going to help your birth. So, I mean, there's so many elements there that are just absolute parallels for, that's where the power comes, is going from within first and starting from that strong centered place. for everything good to happen in our lives.
Yeah.
That's what it tells yourself is I have the answers. The answers are in me, not in somebody else, because it's very easy to say, well, if this person did this, I would be okay. No. Like, what do I need? Where am I at? And starting from there, it kind of takes your power back and helps you like come at it with a clear, like, all I can do is say what I need and then give the person space to respond.
That's right. And the other key thing about that is allowing it to be okay if their response is not what you want it to be, or if their response is disappointment or anger or whatever their response is, right? I think as like a recovering people pleaser myself, so much of my life was spent like not speaking my truth or holding something in because I was trying to avoid someone else's nervous system's response to what I was going to say that might not land well. And so it's also getting to the place where it's like, this is my truth. I need to share it in order to really be okay. And it is okay if the other person, whether it is your partner, your best friend, your parent, your sibling, it doesn't matter. But getting to the place where you can say, okay, this is what's needed for me. And it's okay if they're not okay.
Right.
They will then have
That's
their
huge.
opportunity to figure out why they're not okay. And then maybe we can really, through vulnerable communication around that, find even deeper connection because we are going to then have a better understanding of one another.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I love that being okay with them not being okay, because I think, again, whether it's our society or just family, wherever it comes from, it's very common to not be okay with uncomfortable feelings or negative feelings. And I'm thinking more of like parenting now, like your kid is upset. We can't just let them have their emotions and hold the boundary. We've got to make them feel better because we're uncomfortable with that upset. And so there's so many layers there, but that's what I heard you say. Like you are not responsible for how they're going to feel, but you still need to be able to communicate your needs and
desires and internal workings, right? So like when we don't do that, in particular, when we don't do that because we are afraid of how the other will respond, it really is a form of self-betrayal. And that actually exacerbates disconnection because if we are betraying ourselves, we do not trust ourselves. And if we do not trust ourselves, we cannot completely trust others. So it becomes this like vicious cycle in a way until we get skilled enough to be with ourselves and the things that come up in us and to be with others and the things that come up in them. And, for me, it's easier for me to say this as someone in midlife than it is to try and approach it with folks who are maybe having babies or getting married or thinking about conception in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, because it's just, there's a certain amount of lived experience that gets you to the point where you can be like, you know what? I can't care as much anymore about that because I've got to take care of myself. And so one big part about what I love doing is to kind of be able to share the wisdom that I've gained from 43 years on the planet with folks who are younger so that they have the opportunity to cultivate that in themselves much, much sooner than I have. I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so one of the things I've started doing in that realm is holding like ceremony for girls who have started menarche, right? So it's the more we can start teaching this honoring of self, the younger we can start teaching and cultivating this honoring of self and how that plays into the honoring of another whom we choose to love, the more solid and connected I think our whole world becomes, right? Because as they say, it starts at home, right? It starts here, and it starts with whoever's in these walls, and then it bleeds into our communities in really beautiful ways because we all benefit from experiencing other people's love, other people's connection as much as our own, like, because it's palpable no matter where you are.
I totally agree. And that's a perfect segue to
I know, that's so great.
our next, when we get back together and talk again, our next episode.
I can't wait for it. So great. So Stephanie, how can people find you or work with you? Your work sounds amazing, and I hope everyone can experience it.
Thank you. Yeah. So I work both in person for folks in the Atlanta metro area. I will travel 2 hours. So think Birmingham, think Chattanooga. Sometimes if the fit is right. I also work virtually. So people can find me on Instagram at transitionalalchemy.com. They can reach me at Stephanie@transitionalalchemy.com. And the website is www.transitionalalchemy.com.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. This is beautiful and amazing.
Yes. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Are you nervous about the pain of childbirth? If so, you'll want to check out our free Birth Mindset Mastery Move training. You'll discover the one simple move that's the best way to prepare for the pain of labor. This is Amanda. I did this move throughout my second pregnancy, and it's what I teach to my private patients and what we teach moms in progressive pregnancy. It can help you build confidence, increase your pain tolerance, and prepare your body for a more positive birthing experience. To get access today, go to progressivepelviceducation.com/birth mindset mastery.